Hello people of BookTube, Megan here and time for another book review. Today I'm going to be talking about Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas. And this is like a Peter Pan retelling, reimagining, and can I just say, this book hit me in the feels. Like, by the end of this book, I was a mess. And I was not expecting that. And I am so sorry if this shows up in editing. For some reason, this book is really messed up like my white balance. So apologies in advance for that. Just noticed I'm not gonna be holding this up the whole review, so gonna have to deal with some wonky white balance for a few minutes. But yeah, I was not expecting the emotions that this book would give me, which I can appreciate. I do love a book that gets a strong emotional response out of me, but just I was not prepared. I was literally just like up here reading it, doing my thing, trying not to sob while my boyfriend is downstairs watching TV. Just trying not to totally lose it and just totally break down at certain parts. Because A, I am not a pretty crier. B, I did not want to concern my boyfriend. He already knows I get emotional over books. Doesn't mean he needs to see evidence of that. I did not want to have to explain that I am horribly sobbing over paper and words. So this book takes place in Oregon. Wendy, 5 years previously, had gone missing for 6 months with her brothers, but she's the only one who returned. 5 years later, they still have no idea what went on. Wendy has zero memory of what happened in those 6 months, where her brothers are, what happened, and her brothers are still missing. Present day, Wendy is just turning 18. She's, trying to go about life. She is doing volunteer work at a hospital. She is going to be going off to college when the summer ends. Unfortunately, children start going missing, much like her and her brothers did 5 years prior. It's starting to raise questions again, like what happened, are these cases connected? And then in the middle of the road, she stumbles across a boy that she only thought existed in the stories that her mother told her and she in turn told her brothers. Peter Pan. So love this retelling, love this twist on Peter Pan. Like I've thoroughly established by now, this got a severe emotional response out of me. The fact that Peter Pan was like one of my comfort movies as a child, and Peter Pan in general was like a comfort character to me as a child. Like literally the idea of running off, never growing up, having no responsibilities appealed to younger me so much. Like me and my best friends across the street at the time would literally pretend their jungle gym was a ship that would take us to Neverland, and we would go on adventures with the Lost Boys, and we had whole games involving Peter Pan when I was a kid. So I don't know if that has anything to do with my emotional response or not, but whatever. But yes, this was great. The perfect little mix of like reality, magic, and a little bit of true crime thrown in there. And just, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Highly recommend this. This is probably one of my favorite reads of the year. I don't have much more I can say without going into spoilers, so for those of you who have not read Lost in the Neverwoods yet, highly suggest you click right now and come back after you catch up. So apologies in advance if I keep looking down. I will be looking at my notes throughout this review, so apologies in advance. So just want to say I appreciate the little tweaks, such as turning the Lost Boys into the Lost Ones. Just little things like that I do appreciate. So, and I also like how Peter, chilling out outside the window, listening to Wendy tell the stories to her brothers, was acknowledged as a little creepy. It's not as creepy as breaking into your room to watch you sleep creepy, but it's still pretty creepy. Even when it's like children doing it, it's kind of creepy. Just it's a small thing, but I like how that's just acknowledged. And another thing that I really, really loved is just the whole concept of the shadows being its own like creature, but like living off of the negative emotions of people. Just, I don't know, something about that I really enjoyed. And how a shadow, if they get strong enough, can kind of take over a person as well. Just that whole concept, just something about it. Love it. I can't put my finger on it. And that really frustrates me that I can't put a finger on it. But just that whole concept I love. Also, the little, I don't know if I can call it a twist, but I'm going to be saying twist because that's the only thing I can think of to describe it. Little twist that Peter is the guide for children's souls who have suffered like traumatic deaths. You know, to take them somewhere fun, give them a place to distract them, to give them time to process what they've been through before moving on. Just, I love that. I absolutely love that. I do remember reading like a Tumblr post, I believe it was, years ago with that kind of concept. Loved it then. I love seeing it in action now. And I will admit, I do like that a whole lot more than just him being an irresponsible little boy who doesn't want to grow up. Just, I don't know, it's just a happier image, if not like a sad one. I thought that was going to be the case of how things went when Peter was like using John and Michael's voices to like soothe Wendy's mother. Like honestly, when it was revealed just how spot on his imitations could be, I thought it was going to take a darker tone, but once, you know, we saw how much it soothed Wendy's mother to hear John and Michael's voices even though she was like asleep and thought she was dreaming. That's when like that old Tumblr post like resurfaced in my mind. I'm like, is that the route we're going? And I am glad we went that route. And then just him being like, telling Wendy he doesn't like seeing people sad or hurting. And also I love how like ironic it is that Peter feeling love and affection towards Wendy, something that should be seen as positive, is what fuels the shadow. It's what's weakening his magic. I don't know, just as a reader and someone who enjoys writing as well, just stuff like that I love. Little twists and like tweaks like that. Just something that is so associated with being good, love, affection, attachment, positive like things like that being twisted for a darker purpose or being the fuel behind something that's darker, shadow going stronger. You know, that Peter's like personal feelings for Wendy, his otherwise positive personal feelings for Wendy, having such negative consequences. Just love that. I love that. And it also kind of adds that bittersweetness, how they can't be together at the end because something like that will happen again. Like, the world needs Peter. Just adds that nice little bittersweetness and like additional reason why they can't be together. Because if Peter decides to stay, to grow up, have a life with Wendy, who's gonna guide the children's souls to Neverland? Who's gonna help them move on? And what's to stop the shadow from getting strong again and causing torment to these lost souls? So it was very sad to find out what really happened to John and Michael, that they were killed. Part of me also loved that because it's been 5 years. It didn't really feel like there was much other way it could have gone. Like, yes, this book has magic in it, but also like balanced out, which is something I also really liked, how the magic and reality were like very well balanced. It was magical but not like enough to be like full on fantasy in my mind. So it's just like if John and Michael were stashed in Neverwhere somewhere by the shadow or whatever, then they wouldn't have aged, and that would have been kind of hard to explain. And I feel like it would have tipped the scales to a little too magical, just would have raised way too many questions for the adults. And even if they had aged up the 5 years, it still would have raised quite a lot of questions, like where were you, what happened, and just, I feel like it would have been harder to have like a satisfactory conclusion. Because either, you know, the kids don't answer what's going on and the adults keep questioning them, or the adults find out the truth and they all learn about magic, and just that would create chaos. Just, I don't know, it felt like the logical choice to make to have them die. But also I think that's what also like really hit me in the feels. Like, I am an older sister. I am the oldest in my part of the family, and I have 2 younger brothers. And funny enough, the age gaps between John, Wendy, and Michael are the same age gaps that are between me and my 2 younger brothers. I'm the oldest. 3 years later, my middle brother came along. 3 years after him, we got our youngest sibling, my youngest brother. So it really hit hard for me as a sister like Wendy, finding out that her brothers are dead and have been dead this whole time, and how she feels at fault for that. How she feels she should have protected them, and just all her feelings coming to the surface gave me all the feelings, just picturing myself in her shoes, and yeah, that was definitely the biggest, like, emotional punch I've had in a while. And then, like, knowing that their souls are still in Neverland after 5 years, they haven't been able to move on yet, partly because of me, and just guilt, and her worrying about her parents finding out the truth, and then her telling her parents that they're dead, and just the emotional roller coaster that was. Oh my god. Moving on before I start crying on camera now. Okay. And it was just like a little passing thing that the Shadow said. First off, I like how the Shadow took on like a personification. Him and Peter being like mirror images of each other. With, you know, differences. But also the fact that the Shadow mentioned that he was like the darkness that tormented the lost souls of children. And until Peter came along, there was really nothing standing in his way. And just, I love the fact that they're like two sides of the same coin. The Shadow, the one who torments the children. Peter, the one who guides and helps them. Just, I'm a sucker for that. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. And won't lie, when Wendy is taking on the Shadow, and for a moment she thinks it's John and Michael there, like, hugging her, helping her, but it's really the kids that were kidnapped. Won't lie, I thought it was gonna be the cliche, like, John and Michael's spirits came back to help her. I'm glad it wasn't. I'm glad it was, like, the children there. Instead of running away, they stayed to help Wendy take down the Shadow and attach it back to Peter. And it also felt kind of poetic, for lack of better words. It's probably a better word that I am blanking on, but just these kids who are so afraid. They've been through, like, probably the scariest thing any of them have been through, and they still didn't run away when they could have. They stayed to help Wendy. They didn't let their fear pull them back. They didn't let their fear stop them. And also that this task of stalking the Shadow and attaching him back to Peter is a task that no one, not even an adult, can do alone. Which also I liked. Wendy didn't have to do this whole thing on her own. She had help. I don't know, I'm probably reading far too into that. Just, it took more than one person and not necessarily adults to do it. Not even teenagers. Like, literal children. Once again, was an emotional mess. I already mentioned this, was an emotional mess when Wendy had to tell her parents what happened, and her parents apologizing for failing her as parents. And just guys, I also love the fact that they acknowledge that they didn't handle things as good as they could have back then. It's also love when parents can acknowledge that they haven't been perfect in their child raising, that they have their failures as well as their successes in raising their children. Love to see that stuff be acknowledged. Also, just quickly discussing the epilogue, I love how at the beginning of the epilogue it's acknowledged that Wendy did suffer finding out the truth of what happened to our brothers. It wasn't all fine and dandy, just, okay, got my answers, wash my hands of it. That it did affect her mental health negatively, as it should. You find out that your brothers are in fact dead after 5 years, and the reason why, that's gonna mess you up. So I like how therapy and like meds are brought up to help her get through that. Love to see that. Realistic outcomes for something that happens. And also therapy and medication to help anxiety, depression, all that being portrayed in a positive light. Always love to see that. And just the help that she realized I'm not okay and got the help. Also love seeing that. And also just, I find it great that she's decided to say, you know what, I'm gonna be a doctor. Not just a nurse, she wants to be a doctor. And frankly, I think she'd be a good doctor based on her character. And also just a little poetic. She's helping living children. Peter is helping the dead children. Just, I don't know if I can consider that two sides of the same coin. I could also be reading too much into this as well. I love that as well. Just, it felt right. So most of my filming this has just been total rambles, and just, even with my notes, I'm worried that I'm not making any sense. I've been having a very bad word day today. Hopefully this all makes sense. So for anyone still watching, what do you think? Did you like this book? Did you not? Are you somewhere in between? What are some aspects of this book that you loved? Let me know. Let's get a discussion going. And yeah, that's it for this video, and I hope to see you guys next time.